Do you want to write a book but aren't sure quite where to start? Then you're going to want to lean in today's Bizapalooza chat. I'm Ivana Taylor, and today we're going to show you how to get that book written. Now, sure, we can talk to successful authors who have published dozens of bestsellers, but when you're stuck, writing a bestseller seems completely unattainable. Instead, we're going to talk to someone who is just like you and me. Her name is Katherine Lang. Katherine is an author, a speaker, and a freelance writer who's going to share her experiences with writing. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so thrilled that there's nothing I love more than when we have community members be our guest. It's like my favorite thing on the planet.
Well, I was excited. I love words, and more importantly, I love helping people share their words.
So that brings me straight into my first question. You know, I guess I know you as a writer. I know you as my snark sister, right? But I would love to hear a little bit more about your author's journey, because as I was cruising your website, I thought I saw some really interesting stories there.
I started writing, I can't remember a time when I didn't write. Let's put it like that. But I had my first experience with rejection when I was 17, and it turned me off to writing completely. And the irony is that it wasn't really a rejection. I was 17 and the magazine I submitted to needed my parents' permission, but I saw it as a rejection. And when we get rejected at any level, we tend to shut down and walk away. And so I put my story in the drawer like so many of us have, and I walked away. And it was only about a decade later that need for words began to stir again, and I had to pursue them. So I brought that story out, dusted it off, and started writing again, and haven't stopped since.
I think that's real interesting. You know, there's that what happens, you got a rejection and you made it mean that you were no good. Did it not occur to you that you needed your parents' permission? Like you missed that part?
Oh, yeah, no, it totally missed. I mean, it said it in the words. It said, you're 17, we need your parents' permission. But I heard, you're not good enough. Because we hear what the world tells us we're supposed to hear, not necessarily what is being said to us. And we make more out of something than it is most of the time.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, what did you learn from that experience?
I learned from that experience and from the life experiences that led me up to start writing again, that there's always going to be somebody that has an opinion about what I'm doing, good and bad. And it's not as important what they have to say as it is what I have to say. As long as I believe in the words and I continue to pursue the words, I'm going to be able to get those words out there.
So, sorry, let's go back then. So you got that rejection. Now, how did you end up getting back on the writing and the author track?
I had children and I needed to make money. And writing is so natural to me. I started writing for forums. Do you remember forums?
Sure.
I mean, they're still around, but they were really big when the internet started getting big. And I got paid 15 cents per word to write answers on forums. And I expanded that and started writing about anything I thought I could write about. And I had some of the owners ask me to write articles for them. And from the articles I started writing for them, I started writing my own content. And from that, the need to tell that story that had been hiding in my drawer became overwhelming, and I had to let it out.
So just to be clear, the writing that you're doing, and do tell us, right? Because I think some of the stuff I saw on your author page were actually not necessarily business books or marketing books or content writing books. What kind of books did you start writing?
I am a natural born encourager. I'm one of those people that, you know, when I came out of the womb, I slapped the doctor on the rear end and told him he did a good job. It's just part of who I am. So everything I write has got that element of hope and an element of encouragement. So I do nonfiction that's focused on that and finding your purpose, but I love to tell stories. And there's so many things that I've heard whispered growing up and things that I've encountered that I have to put my spin on them and tell them. So that's my fiction writing.
Oh, awesome. So let's talk about the benefits of writing a book. What would you say are the benefits of writing a book in hopes of maybe getting folks to get off their bum to write that book?
The number one benefit of writing a book is it builds your authority and your expertise in that market and in that niche. People, when they see your name in print, they tend to give you a little more authority than they would if you just say, hey, I know something about this. Mm-hmm. It also gives you something tangible to show someone. It becomes a packaged calling card of sorts. So now you've got something that you can take with you when you go to an event or when you're speaking and that you can share out. And it's a product you can share on your website.
Great. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, making money on a book is really hard. What are some ways that you can, get some financial benefit out of writing a book?
Monetizing your book is more about building your platform, and the two can be compatible, or one can help build the other. You can build your platform and let it sell your book, or you can let your book help you build your platform. And they work together. The thing to remember is that whatever you're trying to do, when you're trying to monetize something, when you're trying to build your business, it's not going to be easy. It's going to require work. And when you're monetizing your book, when you're turning it into your profession, it's going to take work too. But as long as you're investing in people and building relationships and working on ways of being relentlessly helpful with those people and for those people, the book is going to be a benefit for them as well as for you.
Love. I see a hashtag in there, #relentlessly helpful. Love that. So other than writing a book, what are some other ways to build that credibility? Because I think you've done that, right? You have credibility on your, is it fiction? Like it's non-business related.
Right.
Books. Now, how do you build your credibility? How do you use that and leverage that into your business?
I think the most important thing is to know your brand. Over the last couple of weeks, almost every chat I've been involved in, we've been talking about plans, and today is the second day of the second half of the year. So it's really important that you have that plan solidified. And when you know what your plan is and what your brand is and what your voice is, then it naturally will translate into the book product that you're creating. If you're a podcaster, you can take your podcasts and you can compile those into a book. Now you've got a product for your listeners that can help draw them to your website and give them more than just your podcast. If you're a blogger, you have posts that are related already. Compile those posts into a book, add some space for them to journal and grow their own path in what they're writing and what they're understanding. Your words can be repurposed right now in so many different ways. And so when you think of writing a book, you think of having to do, 50,000 words from scratch, but you probably already have over half of those already created.
I think that's a great point. Let's work off of that point and talk about things that get in the way. So you've kind of already answered one of those, like, I don't know what to write. And you've already said you probably have content already. So that's step number one. What else can get in the way of getting that book written?
The number one thing that gets in our way when it comes to writing your book or pursuing your purpose or building your business is the man in the mirror. You let that man in the mirror tell you can't, or tell you that you'll wait till tomorrow, or whatever excuse is the flavor of the day. Once you can get that man in the mirror out of the way, then you're going to have to deal with the well-meaning people around you that tell you that writing a book is hard. Riding a bike was hard until you did it. Until
You're
you do
laughing.
it, yeah, until you do it, it's hard. But once you do it, then you know that you can.
That's fantastic. So let's kind of talk a little bit about some other more fun things. I'm kind of curious about you. For you, is it better to write on paper or a computer? What's the difference for you?
For me, the difference is if I write on paper, it never crashes. And that's a wonderful benefit to have, but it also forces me to do a second draft. So when I am doing my scripts for my podcasts or I'm doing my blog posts, I try to write them out on paper first because it forces me to do a second draft, and I can't hit publish until I do that second draft. When I'm doing something like National Novel Writing Month in November, I will always do it on computer because it keeps up with the word count. So both of them have their benefits and reasons for using them, but both of them can be beneficial as well.
That's fascinating. Hold on a minute.
That's okay. I'm a pencil paper person for the most part. I use my computer a lot, but I really enjoy pencil and paper.
And I have an issue. I'm almost quite the opposite. And I've heard lots of writers say they're pencil paper, but when they get that pencil in the hand and that legal pad, the thoughts just go. For some reason, I'm not that way. I tend to, when I'm on paper, I can do like general ideas, but I need that keyboard.
The clickety, clickety, clickety.
I need something, and that's just me. So, I mean, I think there is no right way, I think, is the actual answer to that question. You have to know what works. How do you discover what works?
You have to try out different things and different things at different times. One of the benefits that I had, when my father-in-law was in the hospital in November, I was able to, I could write on a pad and pencil no matter where they stuck me. But if I tried to pull out my laptop, it was a lot more complicated and cumbersome. So it was nice to have that paper and pencil there. It doesn't always work for me. When I go to homeschooling events, waiting for my son, if I can find a place to plug in and a place out of the way, then my laptop's great. So it's just finding what works for you. And that's the key. You have to find what works for you, because if it doesn't work for you, you won't work it.
So what's your next book? What's the book you have inside you now?
I am currently working on 4 because I like to mix it up. It keeps everything fresh. And I am doing the final rewrite of a fiction novel called They. And it is exactly like it sounds. It is about the controlling factor of a small town. And then I am also working on a tourism fiction book. It is a middle grade novel, and it is the 3rd in a series. It's called Riddle of the Cave, and it's been following 3 brothers as they track these clues that lead them all along the state of Alabama. And then I have a couple of nonfiction. I'm always working on nonfiction because I love nonfiction.
So let's get really down and dirty and talk about some practical tools and resources that you think every author needs. What are you using? Do you use any kind of special tools?
No. And the only reason I'm not a special tool kind of person is because I can break them. Other than my pencil and my paper, that is about as special as I get. I've tried the different programs that are out there, and I have some friends that are really in love with the different programs. But to me, the learning curve was so high that it caused I had to invest more in it than I was getting out of it. The other tool that I have is an old recipe box. And I inherited it from my mother-in-law. And I keep that handy, and I make notes of characters that I meet, and maybe something that somebody says that's totally inappropriate, out of place or incorrect. I love incorrect verbiage. Like I heard a lawyer call something, don't be going willy-willy on that. And he meant willy-nilly, but it struck me as so funny. I was like, could you imagine in a, major court hearing, willy-willy, and where you would go in your mind. So I'll write those kind of things down on the note cards, and it makes it easy and compact for me to have around. So again, it comes back to what works for you.
That is such a great tip, because I was going to ask you, how do you keep things organized, right? And I love the recipe box idea. I can imagine doing lots and lots of index cards. Talk a little bit about just some real quick and dirty processes, right? Like we talked about, one, do an inventory of material that you have, kind of go through a process that one could use about getting that book started. What if you have lots of content, but you don't know what kind of book you have?
I think that if you can come up with 10 related ideas, you have a book in you on that subject. Because when you flesh out those 10 ideas, you're going to end up with about 5,000 to 10,000 words per idea and content in between. So just sit down and write down what you're focusing on if you're using your nonfiction, your website content. When it comes to writing fiction, what's the story you've always wanted to read, or what's the story you've always wanted to tell? Those two things, more than anything, can give you the power to move forward. Or what's something that you've read recently that you thought, oh, that would make an incredible opening line. And I use that. Someone showed in their Facebook feed a picture of their son. He was fishing on one of our local lakes, and a skull rolled over his foot. A human skull rolled over his foot. And I sent my friend a message and I said, I'm so stealing that story for my next book. And he said, okay, that's great. And I used that story as a guide for a short story contest and won the short story contest. So when something intrigues you, it's going to intrigue someone else as well.
That is a helpful tip. What are your thoughts about ghostwriting?
If you don't, not everybody loves words. And it blew my mind that not everybody loves words, because I'm such a natural born wordsmith. But there are people out there that everybody has a story to tell. And if words are not your thing, find someone whose thing is words. And that's where ghostwriting comes in. A ghostwriter could literally just sit down and take what you tell them and turn it into a book. Or they could take your course outline and turn it into a book in your voice. You want a ghostwriter that's going to write in your voice, not in their voice. So if you're not a wordsmith or a word lover, it's okay to find somebody who is. Always work in your strengths.
That's perfect. Okay, I'm doodling around here trying to figure out, because I had one last question to ask you. Oh my goodness, I'm like all over the place. I'm not where I want to be.
That's okay.
That's going to be so much fun when I try to shorten this video.
Well, you know what's important is that it's not about being where you want to be. It's about continuing to go where you want to go.
Exactly. Lots of good tweetables there. I know what I wanted to talk to you about, and that's self-publishing.
Okay. I like to say indie publishing. And the reason I do is because if you really put into it what's required, you're independently publishing your book. You're stepping into the position of a publisher. And it's the easiest way to compare it is to a contractor, because a contractor has to know all the plumber and the carpenter, and it's the same thing when you indie publish. You need to know the editors, and not just a editor. You need a content editor, a copy editor. You want line editors. You want to be able to connect with beta readers. You want to know graphic designers, formatters. So there's a lot of intricate details that are required to understand when you come to the position of independently publishing. But I'm an indie advocate. I love the control that you maintain when you take on the position of an indie author.
That's great input. One of my favorite things that I read was one of my secret, what is it called? Guilty pleasures, is a guy on Kindle named John Locke, like the philosopher, only not.
I know John. Yes, I do.
Do you really?
Yes.
I ran into him by mistake, not by mistake, just like cruising around, right?
Right.
And I started reading and I was hooked. I will laugh out loud at his stuff.
And that's really independently publishing. Did you know that the publishing field is the only field where if you invest in your own product, people think less of you?
This is the rant he went on. And I was like, amen to that.
Yeah.
He went on this rant and he's like, nobody sits there and looks down on Bill Gates.
Right.
For public, for managing and investing.
And I think that the reading public is moving away from the stigma that was put on indie publishers. When you look back at the history of publishing and you see people like John Grisham, indie published his first book, and people like that. And Hugh Howey has done wonders for the indie publishing market. It is the traditional publishers that still hold traditional publishing on its pedestal, and it is not necessarily the readers. So as long as you're putting out something that's going to make people, that's going to be relentlessly helpful and entertaining to the people that you're providing it to, I think that they're okay. They're not looking at the publishing mark as much as they used to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another piece of advice that I think John Locke, he wrote a book on how to publish, how to sell on Kindle. And I thought it was really outstanding. I reviewed it. And one of the things that he talks about is how focused he was on his audience and who he wanted his characters to be. And I can see that you and I are in that same space.
Yes.
He specifically said he was targeting middle-aged professional women who read and write for a living and who love reading, but you're like, how much can you read that's in your business space?
Right. And that goes back to your plan. Whether you're writing a book and doing it to build a profession, or you're writing a book to help your existing business, if you don't have a plan that includes your target, you're never going to be able to get what it is out of it. And you need to hone your target as finely as you can. I mean, does she drink coffee or does she drink tea? Is it a she? Is it a he? Does she have blonde hair, brown hair? The more specific you can get, the more you'll be able to identify with that target. And I like to picture a pond, a still pond. And you come over to the pond and you drop a pebble in the pond, and that's your target market. Where that pebble lands is your target, that single one person you're writing for. But what's amazing is when that pebble hits the pond, it ripples out and touches the entire pond. So although you're writing for that one individual person, it's going to ripple out and touch other people as well.
All right, Catherine, we got to stop it there because we got to head over there on the Twitter and run our chat. Tell folks how they can get in touch with you. What's the best way to reach you and how you can help them?
Okay. The best way to get in touch with me is by visiting catherinelang.com or snarkyrainbows.com. And I have a special going on. We are getting ready to launch a free series of webinars to help people write their books. So they can head over to catherinelang.com and there'll be a link there to get your book written. And they can sign up to get more information about the free webinar.
That's fantastic, Catherine. Thank you so much. We're going to head over on Twitter. Join us each and every Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, where we get on Bizapalooza Chat, answer all your small business questions. Thanks a lot, Catherine.
Thank you.